Welcome everyone, and thanks for making it out on this wild evening with all the rain everywhere and battling through the puddles to arrive here in Comrie. So if you don't know me, my name is John Paul. I live in Comrie. I've been here about 5 years. This is where I live. So just before I start, just a few practical details. One is just to mention that there is a toilet and there is someone arriving. There is a toilet through the hall here. And if anyone needs to get a drink of water, there's a kitchen through there. Welcome, Doug. So, the title of this talk, Healing Sexual Abuse, a Rebirth of Purpose. When I first mentioned to someone in the village that, this is what I was going to be talking about, their initial reaction was one of, recoiling from it. And they said, I couldn't possibly come to that, that's much too difficult. And that's, one of the challenges about talking about sexual abuse, is that it's a difficult conversation to have. It's very much a taboo subject in a lot of places in our society. But what we know is, in the press, all these reports coming out of historical child abuse and, so many areas of our society, they just keep on coming out, kind of wave after wave. And to me that, whatever has happened, the actual speaking about it seems like a good thing, that these things are finally coming to light and we can actually have a conversation about it. So one of the reasons for me giving this talk is just to actually have the conversation. It was about a month ago I decided to talk about this. And when I thought about why I wanted to do this, one of the reasons was actually just to speak about it. So no matter what I speak about from here on in, at least we're having the conversation. I mean, a lot of the organisations that support survivors of sexual abuse in Scotland, they've got names like Speak Out Scotland, Break the Silence, Open Secret. So there's definitely a move towards, speaking out and breaking the silence is a beneficial thing to do. So just to be clear about where I'm coming from in this talk, first of all, I've got a professional interest. So I do a therapy with the breath, which I'm going to be talking quite a bit about in this talk, breathwork or rebirthing. And I see clients who have had this experience, they've experienced childhood sexual abuse, and I work with them one-to-one. And the other aspect of it is I personally have also experienced sexual abuse in my childhood. So I'm talking from personal experience. So this is one of the challenges, of bringing it out, because if you've experienced it, there's a lot of shame bound up in it, and that causes people to, keep quiet about it. And the thing with children as well is that they're encouraged not to talk about it. That also creates a lot of silence around it. And I heard recently that silencing aspect is just as damaging as the original trauma, is this silencing we have in society. So this is my contribution, as it were, to this sort of wider movement in society, is just to stand up here and talk about it. Now, I had no idea this was really in my experience consciously up until about 9 years ago. I was just going through my life doing what I did. I had no inkling at all this was in my background. But what happened for me in sort of late 2007, early 2008 is a lot of things in my life fell apart. And the previous year I'd sort of come out of my business, I'd sold out my business thinking I was going to create something else. That hadn't happened by then. And I just ended an important relationship in my life, so I'd split up with my fiancée. And I found myself in the position of, I had no job and no income. I didn't really know what I was doing or where I was going. And I had no commitments to anything in my life. And for the first time in my life, I kind of looked at this and went, there's a pattern here. I've done this before. It seemed that it would come round to like every November, early November, not just November, early November, I would end something, I would end the relationship, whether it was work or whoever I was in a relationship with, and I'd walk out of it. And for the first time, I just kind of noticed this and thought, this doesn't work, you know. I have to do things differently because this isn't working for me in my life. So that then propelled, you know, a search over the next 2 to 3 years. I kind of went on this search to try and answer a couple of questions for myself. And the first one was, I needed, you know, a new career. That's what I was looking for, a career for the next part of my life. I was looking for, you know, more fulfilling work. And behind that, I needed to resolve what was getting in the way. I needed to deal with whatever was upsetting my life so much. So over the next 2 to 3 years, I explored a load of different therapies and courses and workshops and talks. I went through a lot of different things. Alison's laughing because she knew me then. And it was a really rich time in a lot of ways. You know, I learned a lot. But it was also quite a destabilizing time. So the first thing I encountered was I did a fire walk. I found myself at the end of 2007, Hogmanay at Lendrick Lodge, just about 40 minutes from here. Lovely place. Found myself at this fire walk through a series of coincidences. And did the fire walk, and then for the next few days, I spent time on my own in this house, and all I had was a bed and a table and chairs, and I sat writing all these goals for my life, for the next part of my life. And a lot of those bore fruit, so it was a really, you know, productive 3 days. And from the fire walk, I then encountered shamanism and got involved with that briefly. I encountered NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, didn't get on with that too well. And I started working with a bodywork therapist who I then worked with for the next 8 years, who through everything else I was doing was kind of there with me on the journey. And in that first year, I also hooked up with this organisation called Landmark. Within the course of a year, 6 different people had told me about Landmark. And some of them, they didn't even know me, but they met me and they said, "You should do Landmark." And when the 6th person said that to me, I thought, I'd better go and do Landmark. So off I went down to London to do this thing called the Landmark Forum. And I had no idea what it was, but I was just kind of launching myself into all these things, saying, that sounds good, and I'll go and do it. And off I went to London. And at Landmark, what happens is, you know, you have about 200 people in a room, and people get up on the stage and share about their life. And a facilitator, you know, rips holes in what they're saying and points out what they went terribly wrong. And it's a blunt but effective instrument. And when I was there was a woman who got up on stage, was sharing about her life. And what she was saying was that 2 of her sisters, she had 2 sisters, it seemed that they'd been sexually abused when they were younger. But they were both mentally ill, so no one really knew whether they were telling the truth or not. And as she was talking, I just felt this really strong connection to what she was saying. It was just like a sort of a thread between us. And I didn't know what that was about, but it opened something up in me. And all of a sudden, this word, abuse, appeared in my life. And I didn't know what that related to. It's not a word I'd ever, you know, applied to my own life at all. But the word was just there. And I thought, okay, it's there. I don't know what that's about, but it's just there. And you know, I was working with this body worker and exploring it a bit, but I was really retaining an open mind towards it. You know, I wasn't looking to put it onto anything. Meanwhile, in my parental family, a family of origin, someone else used the word, and they kind of lobbed a grenade into the family. And that created a lot of turmoil, a lot of conflict, a lot of stress for everyone. But again, I was just like, well, that's interesting, because I hadn't talked to anyone about it. I hadn't gone to anyone and said anything. But here was the same word being used, you know, within a space of a few months. So again, I was thinking, well, that's interesting. I'll just kind of put that there. And I continued doing all these different things. I launched into a program of group analysis. I wanted to learn how groups worked. So I started this course in group analysis in Glasgow. I wanted to learn about group dynamics. I didn't realise that once a month I was going to be in Glasgow being analysed in a group. And when I turned up and I found out that's what was going to happen, I hadn't really read much about it. Someone said, no, go and do that. Okay, I'll go and do that. And I found myself in this room, sort of like, not quite freaking out, but having a lot of reaction to it. And I said, look, I'm not here for personal therapy. I just came from professional interest. And the facilitator I said, aye, right, yeah, take a seat, so, and it was amazing. It was an amazing course. It was really interesting. It taught me what I wanted to know, as well as being really beneficial. And it showed me for the first time really how other people were perceiving me in my life. And very early on I started to see, oh, that was really interesting what I just did. It started to give me a bit of insight as to how I was operating. And then I moved from that into another body of work called Family Constellations. This is like me marketing loads of different therapies, and I should be getting commission here. Family Constellations, amazing. This was something I worked with once or twice a year over quite a few years. And what that work is about is, well, the premise is that things that have happened in generations past are influencing your own life. So they haven't been resolved and they're repeating in your generation. So we see how trauma gets propagated down through generations. You find that especially abuse, it goes from one generation to the next. But it can happen really subconsciously. It's just something that might show up in that generation, and then 2 or 3 generations later it shows up again. And so you would do this over a weekend with other people, and you would take an issue and play it out in the constellations. Very hard to describe, but things do get resolved by resolving them back the way. That's the context it sits in. And what happened for me in that first constellation was, well, I just took this symptom of tightness in my body. That's what I said. I've got this tightness, start with that. And what came out of it was that there was sexual abuse in the family. That's what it pointed towards, not in my life, but elsewhere. So now it's gone from abuse to like sexual abuse is now visible. But, again, I couldn't really relate that to my own life. I had no direct experience of it, is what it seemed to me. But I knew it was there. But I get this questioning is kind of coming up, saying, I wonder if this has happened in my life. It's getting closer. So while I'm doing all these things, I'm not really working. And, my savings pot is going down. And that is creating anxiety for me. And, I'm doing these courses, which is great. And then I come out of them and I think, I don't know what I'm doing. Where am I going with all of this? I have no idea. And I was quite unstable at various times. I was just completely open to experience. I'm soaking up all these different emotional experiences. And what's happening is external events are triggering me. They're really impacting me emotionally. So things would happen and I'd start feeling all this grief. And these thoughts of abuse would be coming up just through these different situations that were going on in my life. So that was all a bit, unstable. And, I found myself walking around Edinburgh one day and I would just cry my eyes out. A friend found me. I just felt like I was having a breakdown. And, I'd come home from doing a course or a meditation class or something. I just thought, I don't know what I'm doing. And I was used to being a busy person. And I ran my business. I had like big to-do lists. We like to-do lists and things to fill the day. And there was nothing to fill my day. I had nothing going on. And what happened is, in 2009, there was a shift. I was out in New Mexico doing a course out there. And when I was out there was a kind of shift in my experience. And I came back to Scotland and I felt just a bit clearer and a bit stronger. And a stronger sense of being able to get on with things. But I still didn't really know where I was going. But I had a bit more energy. and a bit more solid in myself. And what happened in 2010 is I started a diploma in breathwork, or rebirthing, what I'm going to talk about more. So I'll use these two words, rebirthing and breathwork, interchangeably. For me, they're the same thing. It's just different words for the same process. And rebirthing is something I experienced, first of all, in 2004. Way before all of this, someone had just given me a session. I thought that was an interesting experience. And I kind of clocked it as something I wanted to check out sometime as a way of working on myself. And in 2008, I did a week's course at Lendrick Lodge again called Spirit Dance. And that was just amazing. It was an absolutely amazing week. And I came out of that and I thought, this is for me, I'll do this. This can be my next career. But there was no one training in it. This was something that had been around, but there didn't seem to be anyone working with it. And I started doing one-to-one sessions with a facilitator in Edinburgh. And what happened was their teacher came over in 2009 and did a 2-week training. And that kind of helped me along the way, but it didn't really lead to any sort of certificate. And then in 2010, I had the chance to do this diploma. And, people had been saying to me when I was doing all these different courses, how do you know what's working here? You're doing so much. How can you possibly know what is actually working? You need to commit to something. And at the time, committing to anything was a bit of a problem for me. I was trying to stay out of things, experience them, but not really get involved in them. So I decided, at some point that I was going to go all the way through this course, whether I enjoyed it or not. I didn't quite enter the course like that. And these people were saying, John Paul, look, we've got this course starting. And I go, great, I'll come down and do the first module. And I got there and they had this sheet saying, right, sign up for all 4 modules. I was like, oh no, no way. I'll do one. I don't even think I want to do this as a career, actually. I'm not that interested. I have these other things that are much more interesting to me. They were like, okay, that's fine, whatever. And such was that my reactions to things. They said, right, we want to do a 2-weekly support call with you. 2 weekly, you want me to commit to talking to you every 2 weeks? No way, But they kind of gradually reeled me in, and I gradually got through the course, and I did complete. It took me 4 years to complete and get the diploma. And that's what I work with now. I work with the breath, and I have this qualification as a rebirther. So, what is rebirthing and what is breath work? There's a lot of different ways to look at it. So it's a process for healing and resolving difficulties that you have, and also a way of moving towards what you want. It takes you there as you heal. It's a very creative process. And at the heart of it is what's called conscious connected breathing. That's conscious connected breathing. So the first thing is we pay attention to the breath. So this is done in like a session. Someone might come and do a session for like 2 to 2.5 hours and go through a process. But after a while, they learn how to do it themselves. And that's one of the main benefits of it, is that they learn the process for themselves. So they have a period where they're being facilitated and get the hang of it. And then they can learn to self-facilitate. And then gradually, if you keep up with it, it just becomes part of your life and how you work with things. That's kind of where I am with it now. So conscious connected breathing, start off by paying attention to the breath, and I don't know, just every spiritual tradition, we have breath awareness as a spiritual practice. So that's the numero uno, just paying attention to your breath is beneficial. Then we have the connected part, conscious connected breathing. So what this means is that we connect the inhale to the exhale with no pause. So if I was just to breathe like I normally breathe walking about, maybe I'm doing a yoga class and my breath is completely held or something. But when we breathe in a connected way, so there's no pause, so it's just, really exciting to watch, isn't it? Yeah, I can see you. Really enjoying that. Okay, that's really exciting. Now, what that does is it takes you into a trance state when you breathe like that, while you're still conscious. One of the interesting things about the breath is it's both a conscious and an unconscious process. We can either choose to breathe a certain way, or we can forget about it and we'll breathe anyway. It just goes on automatically. And it's like a bridge between the conscious and the unconscious. So when we get into conscious connected breathing, it's like we take a journey with the breath. And as we breathe like that, an experience will unfold for our benefit. Every session is really different. It might be that someone experiences like physical sensations or pain in their body, or really, a lot of energy or ecstasy. They might feel emotion. They might have insights. They might be thinking about things. They might see symbols. Or they might have a really profound experience of themselves and being connected to something greater than themselves. So it comes in at all different levels. So, how is it, what's going on, how is it working? So what happens when we experience something uncomfortable, emotionally uncomfortable, is we have a reaction to it, and we can tighten up. So one thing is we'll freeze the breath. If it's something really traumatic, completely frozen, hold the breath. Your body can tighten up, and when you do that, there's a thought process that goes on, like, I don't like that experience, or this is unsafe. But essentially a pushing away can happen. And that all gets bound up together, and it shows up as a little kink in our breath, a holding pattern. So this happens like thousands of times, So we form all these beliefs about what is good and bad around what we're feeling, and all these different holding patterns in our body. And this all gets built into the breathing mechanism. So when we start breathing connectedly, we're just saying, right, here's an opportunity to do something different. We're going to kind of override all these like inhibitions we got in our breathing pattern. We're going to breathe in a way that's connected, and that allows something different to take place. And allows, what has been suppressed in the body to emerge. So emotions that we pushed away, they actually come up, or feelings and aches that were suppressed come up, and we just breathe through them. And integrate it and resolve it. So one time you've been through a breath session, something has been changed and resolved. And, life is not the same. You're not the same person, and your life will kind of meet you differently. To use the, example of, sexual abuse, one thing that can happen, is experience, like any experience that's too much for us to handle, would completely overload the psyche if you're to face it full on. Imagine a child experiencing this. There's no way they can handle it at all. So it's straight, it's suppressed out the way just for the ego to be able to function. And there's a splitting that goes on in the personality around that. But the experience is suppressed out the way, so they can function. But what happens is, that is still having an impact in their life, because anything that is suppressed in the unconscious is still governing actually how we're experiencing life. So there's very little of our conscious mind, very little influence our conscious mind has. Most of it's subconscious. So we could be making plans for our life, sort of, right, I'm going to get this new job over here, I'm going to go for it and up my salary, or going to have this good relationship over here. But if our beliefs about ourselves and about how the world works that are kind of stashed away in the body and the mind, if they're running contrary to that, such as, you don't deserve anything, you're no good, you're worthless, if those beliefs are operating, they'll just sabotage whatever you're going for. And that was, definitely what I was experiencing in my life. I'd get so far with things, and I'd just find a way to sabotage it. I didn't realise this for a long time, but that's what I noticed in 2008. that there was something going on here. So what breathwork does, there's many, many other processes that do the same thing. Just to say that, I'm talking about breathwork, so I have this particular angle on it. But what it allows us to do is to move that experience that's been suppressed out of the subconscious to where we're more conscious of it. It doesn't mean we'll remember anything. It doesn't mean we have to relive the trauma. It might be that all we feel is a lot of sensation in our body. It might be it just works through body sensation. You don't have to kind of revisit things. It might be you get an image of it, but it might not. For me, I experienced a lot of grief. I had all this grief in my body that I knew something was in there. I didn't know what. But breathwork is the only thing I found that allowed me to go there. It was the only thing that created an environment that was safe enough for me to process things that I hadn't been able to touch. I meditated for years and years and years. I did therapy for years. But it was breathwork that really enabled me to get into the guts of it. And when you experience the raw emotion of it, rather than avoiding it, it's a good thing. It's a really rich thing. You have to really feel that. And once you do that and it's no longer running your life, things start to change. One of the things people report about breath work, the people that I've worked with, and certainly what I noticed, is that your life does start to change pretty quickly. That was a real surprise to me. I had this idea that I would go into a room and kind of do a breathwork session with a facilitator, and I would come back out and just get on with my life. I wouldn't have to change anything. I wanted to get better, but I didn't really want things to change. But what happened really quickly was my life started to change. Because we're letting these beliefs about who we are in the world dissolve. They're going. You just feel something in the body, and that belief is no longer there. It's just been breathed through. We just breathe through it, or we feel it and grieve it, or laugh it out. I've also laughed out the experience. I was in a session once, and I wasn't even going to mention this, but it just came to mind. I was sitting there in this session, lying down, and I was all this pain in my body, and the facilitator was saying, make a sound from the pain, and there was about 6 of us in the room breathing. I was next to this person that I never met, and what I really wanted to do was howl, and all of a sudden the person next to me just howled. And this is one of the interesting things that happen, is the energy is moving around everyone that's breathing, and they howl, and I just completely burst out laughing. Totally laughing my head off. And that was it gone. Laughter is the best way of integrating. It's the best way. So that was a good thing. I've lost my place now. So, I'm going through these experiences, and, what became apparent was this experience of sexual abuse. And, I've never recalled it consciously. It's never been a conscious memory. But what happened was it showed up in that my body reenacted it. That's one of the ways it showed up. My body actually reenacted this scenario. And on at least a couple of occasions, that involved dialoguing with the person who had been there, saying, this isn't right. You don't do that to a child. Saying things that I didn't say at the time. I was able to get a chance to say them. That's part of the kind of healing process. And so that just came up in a session. These things just arise. The other thing about breathwork is it's a spiritual process. What isn't spiritual, but it is definitely a spiritual process. We're breathing this energy through our body. A lot of cultures, including our own, the word for breath and spirit and soul are the same thing. It's not just air or oxygen. This is prana or chi. Spiritual energy we're breathing through our body, and that has its own intelligence. That with your psyche finds a really unique way of working for you to process something in just the right way. So it always finds a way of doing something at a level that you can handle. So for me, that was through the body. That was reenacting it through my body, or feeling grief when I was ready to. and for someone else it might be a different way. Now, the way I work with breathwork, and the way I learn to work with a lot of different things is, we don't go looking for the trauma. It's not like, right, I think I've got this experience of sexual abuse, let's dig it up and have a good rake around and find all this, bad stuff, and all this pain. No, we say, well, where do you want to go? Where do you want to go in life? Let's go towards life. And let's see what we want to happen. And that's the way I work with it a lot. So we can set intentions for our life. You say, well, actually, I want to be living in a place I love, doing great work, in a great relationship, whatever it is. And set an intention, and we breathe on it. Say, right, that's what I want to take into this session. Or I want to take all these into this session, I want everything. And we breathe on it. We say, that's where I want to go. And when you do a breathe on something like that, that sets the train in motion. It sets you going where you want to go. And on the way there, things will come up you need to resolve that get in the way of that. We don't need to go looking for them. We're pointing ourselves in the direction we want to go. And anything that is in the way, so all these unconscious patterns of beliefs, we'll either breathe through them in a session, or life experience will miraculously arrange itself so that we can encounter things that help us to heal different situations. That seems to be one of the things that happens. So life arranges itself for us to get something beneficial, to resolve things so that we can get where we want. And that will happen at a level you're operating. So, if you're applying for a job and you had a big phobia about applying for, filling out the form, so you do a breathing. Okay, you get the form done, that's good, right? Now I've got the interview, breathe some more, and process some more and get the interview. Right, okay, I've got the job offer, I'm going to take on this job. So I breathe more, clear more to enable you to function. And then you're in the job, make more challenges, and on you go. So it's a creative way of working, constantly choosing where we want to go with it. So, it has this word, rebirth, rebirthing. And one aspect of this is you're rebirthing yourself. You're bringing yourself into life all the time. When you have, emotion and energy stuck in your body, your spirit can't really get into your body fully. That's one of the things that happens. It can't really get into the body. Especially at a really traumatic experience, there's a lot of dissociation goes on. People aren't present in their bodies, and that was, definitely the case for me. And people always say to me, John Paul, get out your head. Everything. I tried to overthink everything. Just be caught up in my mental process all the time. But as I dealt with this, so I settled into my body, and that became less of an issue for me. The body has its own wisdom that's separate from the mind. So if you get into your body, you have access to that, a more intuitive way of living. And, you're more here, you're more alive. So you're constantly bringing yourself into life while engaging in life. The other side of that is things have to die. Things have to be left behind. So aspects of the personality that don't serve you anymore have to go. And you experience lots of little mini deaths along the way, or facing death experience. And you had this really obvious example of that for myself, in that I was doing a breathe with my supervisor, my trainer. And normally the way he works is quite open. Doesn't go so much for the specific sort of intention. But I decided I wanted something really specific out of the session. And what I was aware of was, or kind of aware of, was there was an agreement I'd made somewhere that was stopping me committing to things, especially relationship. I had no idea what that agreement was, but I knew I wanted to break it. So I said, right, my intention is to break this agreement so I can now commit in relationship. And I had this idea that as I breathed, it would just come to light and I go, oh, there it is. I don't really want that anymore. I want to choose this, and I'll rewrite it and I'll go this way. And what actually happened in the session is I was breathing, and about halfway through the session, my personality completely disappeared. And all I was left with was the breath. Just this void of who I was. I was just left with the breath. And I knew all I had to do was keep breathing, just like follow the breath. And what then unfolded for me in the latter part of that session was this experience of abuse. So my body completely reenacted the whole scenario, helping to clear it from my body. But what that enabled me to do, so it seemed like I left behind whatever part of my person was all wrapped up in that agreement. I still don't know what the agreement was, but it no longer got in the way, and I was able to go on and commit to relationship in my life. So by the time I finished my training, what I felt was, I'd been given a second life. That was the kind of experience of rebirth I got from it. I didn't really remember much about who I was 3 years before. It was like, you got another chance to live here. That was the sort of extent of the changes that went on. And I'm no longer plagued by all these traumas and things that kept knocking me off course. So I'm very grateful to it. It was an amazing thing for me to encounter and to continue to use. So just so you know, I was breathing all the way towards doing this talk. I phoned up the person I know that is breathwork in Falkirk and said, Morag, I need some help. I don't know how to get on my business. Go and do a breathe, okay. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to do a talk. Right, I'll come down and breathe with that, So it's an ongoing thing. What happens though is, you don't get the goodies for nothing. So I've managed to create this new amazing life for myself, and that's wonderful. But there's had to be some changes on the way. Breath work, as I said, it's a spiritual process. So there's something has to go on there. And for me, there was a shaping up required, to put it bluntly. If you want this, you have to shape up a little. And for me, that was around truth. Before sort of 2008, I had a pretty shaky relationship with the truth, and it was deliberately deceitful. But I got to the point where I didn't actually know whether it was better to be truthful or dishonest. I didn't have that clear in my mind at all. And what became apparent sort of into 2008, when I started doing all these things, was this truth became a really strong element very quickly through all the things I was doing, not just breath work. And that involved me phoning up people from my past and saying, remember that time where I said this? Well, that was wrong, that was a lie, and actually this was the case. I did quite a bit of that. Yeah. It can be challenging. Every time I did that, I just felt this amazing peace. I just felt things completely resolve. It was really beneficial. And what actually happened was I kept on meeting these situations where I thought, I can't possibly tell the truth here. If I tell the truth here, all this work I've done will be lost because, it's not going to work. Or I'm going to be attacked. I had a pretty strong fear of that, being attacked. And, every time I did it, it was a really good thing to do. And the time where I thought I would lose all this work through the things I was doing, nothing happened. There was no impact from telling the truth. But it did something for me. It was constantly being tested on it with truth telling. And in a session I was doing, I had this image of a key once, and the key was truth. I saw this really clear image of a key, and I thought, right, I've got this key and I can use that in my life. And at the time, there was all these things in my life were in complete disarray. But I thought, at least I've got this. So any situation I was finding difficult, I just started telling the truth. Actually I'm doing this because, and that might upset people, but it helped resolve things. And I was also asking for the truth more in my life of other people. And again, in breathwork, well, you know, I'm aware of the possibilities of abuse, so I wanted to know the truth about that. So I said, right, give me the truth. I'm doing a breathe. I say, what's the truth of my experience here? And of course, the great universal joke is, you want the truth, you have to be more truthful. You know, so I never got that. I never got the image I was looking for. But what happened was I had to tell the truth to a greater and greater degree. And so when I didn't, I really felt it in my body. You know, I immediately felt an impact. So this is just my theme. This is one thing that breathwork has brought me into. And I've been developing this business with the breath for the last 3 years. I've been working with clients for about 4 or 5 years. But the last 3 years I've been developing someone specifically. And last year, just last February, all of a sudden it came into view for me that I was going to choose to work specifically with people that had experienced sexual abuse. And, I put that on my website, and I just thought, oh no, I'm going to have to share my own experience here. I was drifting through it thinking, I can be a professional, having this aloof professional relationship. I don't need to tell people about this. I can keep it between the few people that know about it in my life. But all of a sudden I realised I'm going to have to tell people about it. So here I have to tell the truth again. And then more recently, I get the idea for doing this talk just a month ago, as I'm wondering how to let people know about what I'm doing and take this business out into the world, and take this work out into the world. And I think, right, I'll do this talk, and I'll do it in a public forum, because originally I was thinking just specifically for support groups. That wasn't really happening, so I'll just do these in public forums. I won't do one in Comrie. I'll start in Crieff or Perth or Stirling. There's no way I'll do one in Comrie because I know people there. And then immediately I get this other thought that says, you're doing one in Comrie because you know people there. And if you can't be truthful with the people you know, how can you be truthful with anyone? So this brings me right back to what I started with at the talk. So one of my reasons for doing this talk is just to tell the truth about it and open up that conversation generally. So, I've talked a fair bit about myself and my own story here. But of course out there there's, millions of people that have this experience, have their own experience of it. A lot of people in our culture here and a lot of people around the world. And, for me to see this coming up is good. The fact that it's happened is not so good, but the fact that it's emerging as a conversation I see is really good. Because it means truth is coming up. That's what I see. The truth is arising. And, the sort of breaking of the silence can only be a good thing, because it's not until things are made visible that you have a chance of healing them. As long as it's suppressed, in an individual or in a culture, how can we heal it? If we keep on pushing it out of the way, it's only by bringing it out that we actually have a chance to address it. So, in a society where, we have the truth, but we also have, post-truth, is a phrase that I've seen recently. It's quite a strong reaction to, and words like fake news and alternative facts being the most recent one. Getting the truth out seems to be a good thing as an alternative to that. So, what I want to kind of leave you with is, don't be scared of the conversation, out there in the world, because it's a conversation that needs to happen. Don't be scared of it. It's only by talking about it that people can heal it. Because, it does matter that people speak the truth about it. For me to share this is a really good experience. I didn't think it would be a while ago, but as I got closer, this is a good experience. So it's a good conversation for people to have. And the truth matters, so that's what I kind of want to leave you with. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention. I'm just going to invite questions, but before I do that, I just want to make a few requests. First is, this is the work I'm doing and what I'm putting out there, and I'm at a point of basically launching this work. This is the starting point. So if you do know anyone or come across anyone that might benefit from it, then feel free to give them my information. And there's some flyers over there if you want to take any with you or one with you, and business cards. And the other thing is, I will be taking this talk out. So if you know anywhere I could give this talk, or it might be, they might be open to receiving it, then please let me know about it, and I'll, make it happen or make investigations, because that's what I'm looking for, is places to deliver this talk. That's all I'm doing just now. I'm just going to do this talk and see where it goes. And to make that happen, for me to take these talks out, I need fuel. And by fuel, I mean money. So there is a donation bowl there. And I'll just make really clear, there's absolutely no obligation to be anything in the bowl whatsoever. For me to talk to you and share this is a huge privilege, and I really thank you for it. It's a huge privilege for me to actually share this, and I really thank you for coming out and giving me your attention. If you do want to put anything in the bowl, £5 would be really helpful. Thank you very much. Right, Alice is going to get the tea. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions you may have.